Welcome to Designed for More, a podcast about what it means to live in alignment with who you really are. I'm Julie, former CEO turned human design guide and soul-led entrepreneur. Here we explore the journey of remembering your true nature and creating a life that feels deeply good from the inside out. Because you were never meant to settle. You were designed for more. Hi, my loves, and welcome back to Designed for More. I have been contemplating thresholds a lot over the past few days. I've been living in them for much of this year and honestly the last few years. And I keep noticing that almost every woman I sit with in session, in circle, in conversation is standing in one as well. That doesn't actually feel very surprising to me because we're collectively in a 9-year numerology, so closing out a longer 9-year cycle. We're days away from the winter solstice. We're approaching the end of the calendar year and the final quarter of the energetic year. So this is the moment when things naturally come to completion, when truths arise asking us to really look at them, when what's no longer aligned becomes really hard to ignore, and something inside of us starts asking for more honesty. This episode is for you if you're in that space. If you feel like you're standing between who you've been and who you're becoming, if you know something's changing but you don't yet know what it'll look like. I'm not here to tell you what to do, I'm walking with you. What I want to share today is what I've experienced and what I witness again and again in myself and the women I work with about thresholds, what they ask of us, what they offer us, and what I know to be true about moving through them with more trust and more ease. If you're in a threshold right now, I see you. You're not alone. Thresholds are funny because in my experience, they're not loud when they first arrive. They don't announce themselves. They don't show up with a clear beginning or a neon sign that says, hey, this is it. They start often more subtly in the body, in your emotional landscape, or in the quiet places inside you that start to shift long before words in your mind catch up. And also, let me maybe just define what I mean by a threshold. What I'm talking to here is that moment that something ends inside you before it ends outside of you. You know what I mean? It's like that feeling that rises out of nowhere, that moment when something in your life just stops fitting. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because you've changed. And once you've changed, the structures that held you before begin to loosen. Your tolerance drops, your clarity rises, and your energy shifts in ways that maybe you can't fully articulate yet. But then you realize something is ending. Maybe not outwardly, not yet, but internally, something is done. Maybe you feel the truth before you understand it, or you feel the shift before you can name it. Often for me, it's seeing something, recognizing something, realizing something that I can't unsee. And no matter how much you want to go back to how things were, at that point, you can't. Because you're no longer who you were when that version of your life made sense. And there's a part of that process that I've been really feeling into lately, how a threshold isn't a decision that we make. It's more like a truth that we finally acknowledge. It's less of a moment where we choose to end something and more the moment where you admit inside of yourself that something has already ended. And that, can be terrifying. Because thresholds don't wait for your confidence or your clarity or for you to feel brave. They show up when your soul has already moved and your mind is usually trying to catch up. And this can create strange emotional spaces where two realities exist at once. There's the part of you that still wants things to stay the same, and then the part of you that knows that they can't. And so often I have felt, and I have witnessed in others, that that's where grief lives, in that space between the truth you can't deny and then the comfort that you don't want to lose. And grief is allowed. It's part of it. You're allowed to grieve what's ending, even if it's ending for all the right reasons, even if you initiated it or outgrew it, even if the new thing is calling you forward with more clarity and alignment than anything before it. Grief doesn't mean that you're not ready. It just means that something mattered. And I want to say that again. Grief means that something mattered. That's it. Not that you're making the wrong choice or that you should stay or that you're confused. Just that something mattered. And you're allowed to honor that without pretending it's still right for you. Because thresholds bring up fear, not because they're wrong, but because they require honesty. And honesty is about what is ending. It's about what's calling you. It's about who you're becoming. It's about the version of you that can no longer talk yourself out of being. And so that fear, that grief, they don't mean stop. They mean pay attention, feel. Your truth is rising. Life is asking something of you. And most people that I've met think that they're afraid. I've witnessed a lot of people think that they're afraid because they don't know what to do. But often the real source is revealed, which is the fear of knowing exactly what you want to do, exactly what the threshold is asking, and realizing that you can't unknow it. You can't go back. You can't shrink again without feeling it. You can't pretend that you don't feel the pull. And that's usually where the discomfort comes from. It's actually not confusion, but honesty. Because thresholds actually aren't confusing. They're clear. The confusion is what happens when you resist that clarity. And you know that place intimately, don't you? I'm sure you've been here before. That moment where you feel yourself stretching out of who you were, but you're not quite sure yet how to inhabit who you're becoming. The in-between, that liminal space, the hallway between two rooms, often feels like the dark night of the soul, when you're no longer who you once were, but you're not yet who you're about to become. Some people call that the void, but in my experience, it is not empty. Hard, yes. Uncomfortable, yes. But it's also full of potential, full of direction, full of signs, full of truth that you haven't named yet. Thresholds are transitional, but they're not neutral. They're pulling you forward. They're rearranging your energy. They're preparing you for the next season of your life. And your body knows this first. Before logic, language, permission, before you feel ready, most likely, something in your body shifts when you've outgrown a chapter. Your nervous system typically starts to give you signals. Your energy becomes less available for what feels misaligned, and your instinct starts saying no before your mouth dares to. Your desire begins rising in places where you once felt numb. Thresholds start as these sensations, these impressions, this sense of internal movement that comes before any outer action. And then, eventually, the mind notices that something has changed. But even then, the mind is often the last to accept what the body already knows. And that's why thresholds can often feel overwhelming. Again, not because they're unclear, but because they require you to trust the part of yourself that knows things before they make sense. They require you to trust desire, to trust timing, to trust your energetic truth, to trust the life that you're meant to live. And trust is vulnerable. It requires honesty, self-responsibility, letting go of the illusion that certainty comes before movement. But thresholds don't offer certainty, they offer truth, and that's a big difference. Because truth is what arises when you stop trying to make the old life work. When you feel in the quiet moments, when you're not performing, perfecting, pleasing. Truth is what pulls you forward, even when you're scared, and it whispers, this isn't it anymore. Even when no one else can see why. They're truth events, not clarity events. Clarity is what comes later, after you've stepped through the threshold. But at the beginning, all you get is truth, and truth is enough. If you're at a threshold, I want to tell you something important. Please hear me. If you're at a threshold, you're ready. Not because you feel ready, but because the threshold wouldn't exist if you weren't. Thresholds don't appear for people who aren't ready to step. Life never rushes you. Life doesn't push you ahead of your timing or force transformation. Life meets you exactly where you are and opens the next doorway the moment you have the internal capacity to walk through it. They don't open prematurely, so if it's here, you are ready. You may not feel ready, you may not want to be ready, you may be grieving or afraid or uncertain or overwhelmed, but those feelings do not mean that you're not ready. They just mean that you're human. I'm not asking you to be fearless, just to be honest. Honest about what's ending, honest about what's misaligned, honest about what's calling you forward and who you're becoming. Because that honesty is what begins to build momentum. The moment you stop pretending that you don't know, something shifts. Your energy reorganizes, your body relaxes, even if nothing in the external has changed yet. Your system can stop fighting the truth and instead start orienting towards what's next. Truth reorganizes you. When you stop resisting your own knowing, life can begin to cooperate with you. Doors open, people respond differently, opportunities come into focus. Your desires become clearer, your energy becomes more available, your intuition strengthens, and your decisions simplify. You start moving toward the next version of yourself in a way that feels inevitable, like something that was always going to happen. You're just finally letting it. The more honest you become, the more the path reveals itself. Not all at once. Oh, wouldn't it be nice if it worked like that? But it's rather in small, steady, and undeniable ways. Maybe you don't suddenly know everything, but if you simply stop fighting what you already know, that frees up enormous energy. You can start noticing the moments where you've been shrinking yourself to fit inside a life that no longer matches your truth. You start noticing the conversations you avoid because they would expose what you've outgrown. You start noticing the habits that numbed you, the roles that you overplayed, the boundaries you softened, the places where you stayed loyal to a version of yourself you aren't anymore. Thresholds reveal these things gently but clearly. You don't have to analyze them, you just have to see them, to be honest with them. And seeing is where everything starts to change, because once you see, you can't unsee. And once you can't unsee, well, then you can't unknow. And once you can't unknow, movement inevitably begins. And that movement, it's not about making big decisions or radical leaps. Maybe sometimes. I've been known to do a few myself. I do have the gate of extremes, but it's usually subtle at first. It's like an internal realignment or a shift in perspective. And let me tell you, a shift in perspective is not subtle. It could be a softening around what felt impossible before, or a quiet acceptance of, this is just true. You might find yourself in that space breathing differently, resting differently, speaking differently, relating differently, and importantly, choosing differently. None of this sounds dramatic, but I have seen and experienced that the effect is profound. You begin to inhabit yourself more fully, to tell the truth more directly, to orient your life around what is real rather than what is conditioned or expected or automatic. Thresholds require this kind of honesty because becoming who you are, the real you, which is why I do what I do, to support you in revealing, loving, becoming, embodying, embracing, sharing the real you. Not someone different, but the real you demands it. And that's the part that often surprises people. They assume thresholds are about going somewhere new. But really, thresholds are about coming home, coming back into alignment with the person you already are, but haven't been living as. Returning to your inner authority, to your instincts, to your clarity, to your body. Threshold crossings are always a return. And that return, it feels raw because it strips away so much pretending, so much conditioning, strategies that were created to serve a purpose, to protect you in some way. But when you start to see them, to feel whether they're serving you, to challenge them, to open up space for the possibility that they no longer serve you and that you've outgrown them, then you can start telling the truth about what you want. You can tell the truth about what you can no longer deny, the truth about what drains you, what expands you, what opens you, and what collapses you. You can tell the truth about what you desire, even when desires scare you, maybe especially then. Because desire is not something frivolous at a threshold. It's direction. It is clarity. The places where you feel alive, curious, hopeful, pulled forward, those are very clear, sacred signals. They are the breadcrumbs that your future self is leaving you. They're the invitations from your soul. And the fear that arises there is not a warning, it's awareness. It's your system recognizing that the next chapter of your life is closer than you want to admit. Fear at the threshold doesn't say don't go. It just means this matters. This is going to change something. You're touching the edge of your becoming. Fear is often misunderstood because it can be treated like a verdict. But fear is just a sensation of leaving familiar territory. It's the emotional wobble. It's human. It comes with expanding into new identity. If you didn't feel the fear, I might be worried because it's a natural response to honesty when honesty uproots everything that you've built on top of what wasn't true. Fear in threshold work is a companion, not an obstacle. And if you can stop interpreting fear as a stop sign, then a new kind of clarity emerges. Again, it's usually not loud or dramatic, but steady. You can begin to sense the shape of the next chapter, even if you can't articulate it yet. You can begin to feel a direction, even if you don't know what it is. You can begin to trust yourself, even and especially when you don't feel entirely confident. Truth is not the absence of fear. It's the willingness to move with it. This is where the threshold begins to feel less like a problem and more like a passage, like a portal, something you're not fighting anymore, but something rather that you're cooperating with, something that's unfolding inside of you and around you all at the same time. And that cooperation with life changes everything. When you stop resisting truth, life meets you. Timing becomes easier. The next step becomes clearer. Conversations open up. Internal conflict quiets down. What felt impossible starts feeling entirely doable, even if you don't know how to do it yet. What felt overwhelming can start feeling like the obvious next thing. And that's where the process of moving through a threshold becomes unmistakable. You feel yourself being reorganized by something deeper than logic. You feel your identity loosening from old expectations. You feel the future version of you becoming more familiar, more accessible, more embodied. You start to realize that thresholds don't take you away from your life. They take you deeper into it. They take you into decisions that matter, into relationships that can meet you, into boundaries that protect your energy, into work that aligns with your truth, into the timing that supports your expansion. They refine you. They clarify you. They strip away excess. They bring you into experience of yourself that is more honest, more grounded, more true, more whole. And as that deepening continues, something else usually becomes clear. You're not actually stepping into the unknown. You're stepping into a part of yourself that has been waiting for you. Thresholds feel mysterious because the ego hasn't been there before, but your soul has. Your future self has and is. The part of you that sees beyond the present moment knows exactly what this threshold is about. You're not inventing the next chapter, you're aligning with the one that's already here. And that's where the energy starts to rise in a different way. Not from urgency or pressure or adrenaline, from recognition, because you recognize the direction, you recognize the timing, the truth of what you're stepping into, the version of yourself that feels more like you than the one you've been holding on to. And that recognition brings relief, a sense of exhale, a sense of, all right, yeah, of course, a sense of coming back. And with that relief comes a different kind of courage. Again, not dramatic, grounded. The kind of courage that comes from knowing you're not abandoning anything real. You're simply honoring what is. You realize that the life you're living isn't being taken from you. You've outgrown it. You realize that the discomfort you've been feeling is not failure, it's guidance. The restlessness isn't impatience, it's desire trying to get your attention. That's where the energy really begins to gather, because you're no longer lingering, trembling at the edge. You're orienting towards what's next. You're feeling the pull more clearly. You're grieving what's ending, but with more neutrality. You're less resistant, less confused, less afraid of your own clarity. And that's when you can start moving. Not because you're forcing, but because staying still feels harder than moving into the unknown. Misalignment feels heavier. Pretending starts to feel impossible. Avoidance becomes exhausting. The threshold becomes the only place that feels real, even if you can't touch it, even if your mind can't see all of the steps and fully make sense of it. And that's when your system starts making room for what's coming. You feel your identity stretching in a way that's uncomfortable, but right. You start to feel the grief softening and the desire strengthening. You feel the truth settling in your body. And that's where a threshold can become a path. Because you're no longer just aware of the threshold, you're actually participating in it. You're walking it. You're letting it move you, change you, prepare you. You're letting it guide you into a life that matches who you really are. And at that point, something powerful happens. You begin to feel ready. Ready in a way that doesn't need validation or applause or permission. You feel ready because you have walked the process of the threshold itself, and that has prepared you. You didn't force it. You grew into it. You allowed it. You stayed with the discomfort long enough for truth to take root. You honored the grief long enough for clarity to rise. And you stopped resisting the pull long enough for the future to feel familiar. That's the magic of thresholds. They can mature you, refine your depth, strengthen your capacity, open your intuition, expand your discomfort and your tolerance for truth. And the moment you feel that internal readiness, even if fear is still there, even if uncertainty is still there, everything changes. Your relationship to the threshold changes. Your relationship to yourself changes. You begin to realize that thresholds are not something you're standing in front of, waiting to cross. It's something you've already entered. It's something that you've been walking for a while now. It's something you're already inside. It's less like a leap and more like an unfolding. And I find that perspective helps a lot, because once you recognize that you're already inside of a threshold, well, you feel less pressure to make a decision. Because decisions inside thresholds, they're not intellectual. They're experiential. You grow into them. You live your way toward them. You become the person who makes that decision simply by being honest about what's true. And that's why thresholds can often seem on the outside to other people that there was like this one dramatic moment, the moment you left the relationship, the moment you left the job, the moment you started the business, the moment you stepped into your power, the moment you told the truth. But in reality, in your internal experience, it's not really like that, is it? To me, it seems more like we cross through thresholds in a series of small acknowledgments that accumulate. Every time you tell the truth to yourself about what you're finished with, every time you admit what you want more of, every time you stop pretending that an old structure is still right for you, every time you let yourself feel the pull forward instead of shutting it down, all of that is the crossing. So by the time that the outer shift happens, the breakup, the job change, the boundary, the move, the new beginning, you've already crossed the threshold time and time again internally. The external moment is just the expression of what's been happening inside of you for months, years. And that's why threshold crossings often surprise other people, but they don't surprise you, do they? Because you have felt it long before you named it. You lived the truth long before it became visible to other people. And that kind of process helps us to embody what I think is one of the most powerful shifts that I've witnessed. It's the shift of, I don't have all the answers, but I know I can't stay where I've been. And that is enough. Actually, it's more than enough. Because movement, thresholds, portals, growth, expansion don't demand perfection. They just invite willingness. They invite your participation. And as you let that threshold reveal you to yourself, the build continues. Through alignment, you start noticing that you're no longer trying to convince yourself to stay in the old thing. You're no longer arguing with your desire or fighting your own knowing. That inner debate just loses energy. And so you gain energy, you gain space. And that's the moment that I love for my own life and witnessing other people in. The point where your body feels safe enough and has the capacity to say, we're going. Even and especially if the mind says, but are we sure? And then I usually notice something else shift as well. You stop asking for signs because you realize that all of those micro moments were the sign. Your desire is the sign. The discomfort was the sign. The grief was the sign. The relief you feel when you imagine stepping forward, also a sign. You don't need anything outside of you to confirm what's already so clear inside of you. You can trust what you know. And that's why thresholds are spiritual, whether we like to name it like that or not. They awaken a part of you that remembers that the next version of your life is already written on your energy. Your job is simply to cooperate with it. And cooperation begins with acceptance. It's moving from the argument internally in your mind that says not yet, when everything in your body and your emotional landscape is saying now. It's acceptance when your mind says, but I don't know. Whereas you can feel that a deeper part of you already does. Acceptance when your mind says, I can't lose this. But a wiser, deeper, truer part of you knows that you've already outgrown it. It's done. Once that argument quiets within you, once you stop negotiating with yourself, convincing yourself, gaslighting yourself, then the threshold becomes like a kind of energetic current that you can relax into. Not because it's easy, let me be clear, but because it's real. And real is easier to live than pretending. And that's when forward movement can start to feel less like a leap and more like an exhale. Less like a risk, less like abandoning something, and more like returning to yourself. Allowing the threshold to reunite you with who you are, seeing yourself on the other side. And as that threshold continues to carry you, as you move more into your alignment, your authenticity, your relationship to fear changes. Fear stops feeling like danger and starts feeling more like aliveness. It becomes a sign that you're touching the outer edge of who you've been and leaning toward who you're becoming. Maybe you even stop trying to eliminate fear and start letting it move with you. Maybe you stop treating it like a verdict, like a way to convince yourself that no, you shouldn't move in that direction, but start treating it as data, as information, neutral information, that you're close to something important, something meaningful, something that you know from experience will expand your life. And I want to name something important at that stage. What I often see in people and have felt in myself, that when that drops into your body, we can think that we have to rush. Like, holy shit, I've wasted a lot of time. Let's go. Let's do this. And that might be true for some people. Some of the time, thresholds can unfold quickly, but some take their time. Some require an immediate boundary and others require more like a gentle unraveling. Some open suddenly, some deepen slowly, some show themselves in a burst, and others come over seasons. And the pace really doesn't matter. Honesty does. When you're in this process for months, maybe longer, you've been dissolving, shedding old layers, ending untold stories, letting identities fall away, softening your grip on roles that you just no longer want or even can play. And all of that was part of the threshold. But then comes the moment where the becoming begins, where the new self isn't just a whisper. You can feel her taking form. And I've witnessed this time and time again with women. I have felt it in circles and retreats and human design readings. Their new self isn't just a whisper. They can feel her taking form. I can feel her taking form. Not fully or clearly, but it's undeniable. They begin to sense what they're being shaped into, and they begin to trust that vision, even if it's blurry. They begin to feel their courage rise, not because it's easy, but because it's easier than denying yourself, than being in your not self, than playing roles that don't serve you, that exhaust you, that drain you. And that's the internal transformation that thresholds create, a deeper capacity to live in alignment with your truth, which is also a deeper capacity to no longer put up, no longer be available for anything that isn't truth. And the more that this capacity builds, the more natural your next steps feel. Not forced or pushing, but more like something inside you clicks into place and you follow it with faith. And that is such a powerful moment, because then I witness women no longer talking themselves into anything, but more like following themselves, listening to themselves, trusting the part of them that sees farther than their circumstances, and letting that future version lead. And that future version is not abstract or idealized. She's specific, grounded, embodied. She's the you who's already living the life that this threshold is opening. She knows exactly why this moment matters. She knows exactly what this ending is making space for, exactly what you're capable of, exactly what you desire. She knows who you are and what she's asking you to let go. She's walking ahead of you the whole time. And thresholds are where she reaches back and says, it's time, follow me. And when you're ready to meet her outstretched hand, to look her in the eye and say, yes, I can do this. I'm done pretending that I can't. You're not behind or confused or failing to be brave or missing signs, being punished. You're not unstable. You're simply in a threshold. You've outgrown something. You're ready for more. The next version of your life is so close you can touch it. It's appearing because the timing is right. The truth is too deep to ignore now. And that's why it's a spiritual initiation, whether you like to call it that or not. It's asking you to trust your becoming, to trust the pull, to trust the life that you're designed to live, to trust yourself, and not in a way that's expecting perfection. It's just asking for willingness to feel, to let go, to name the truth, to take one step, not 10, not the whole path, but just one right next step. The threshold unfolds step by step. One honest step will lead to the next, and each one makes more space inside of you for breath, for peace, for alignment, for desire, for the life that's calling you forward. If you're at a threshold, you are ready. Not because you feel ready or because it's comfortable or because you have all the answers, but because you wouldn't be standing here if the next version of your life wasn't already alive inside of you. Thresholds don't come early. They come exactly on time, when you've outgrown the person you needed to be in order to survive the last chapter. They come when you're emotionally and spiritually capable of stepping into something more honest. They come when the future is ready for you and you are ready for it. I've created a threshold ritual to support this moment, a short embodied journey to help you meet the threshold you're already standing in and let that crossing unfold naturally. You'll find it linked in the show notes if and when it feels right. The future version of you, the one who has already crossed, is here. Let yourself meet her. Until next time. Thanks for listening to Designed for More. If you felt sparked or seen in today's episode, I'd love for you to leave a review, share it with a friend, or come find me on Instagram at JulieByDesign. And remember, your clarity is sacred and your joy is a signal. You are designed for more.